Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the August 17th, 2021 Post Falls City Council meeting. Clerk will note that all council members are present with the exception of Mr. Malloy, who is excused tonight. Ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentations. I do have an announcement. City Hall and city business offices will be closed Monday, September 6th in observance of Labor Day. Police, fire, and rescue services for life-threatening or in-progress emergencies may be reached by calling 911. The police department will be open for walk-in emergencies. For water department emergencies, call 208-773-3517. And today, the Post Falls Chamber had their monthly luncheon. City of Post Falls was the sponsor today. And when the meeting started, we always start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And there was no flag down at the trailhead. So we all got to have Captain, soon-to-be Chief Greg McLean, stand up so we could say the Pledge of Allegiance to his flag on his sleeve. And Greg likes being the darling of the attention, but decided that it was probably not the right thing to do because he can't be at all meetings down at the trailhead. So Mr. Fair, would you come forward, please? Courtesy of Captain, soon-to-be Chief McLean, may I present you with an American flag for the trailhead. You're welcome.
Well played, well played.
Thanks, Greg. And we do have a presentation, Employer Support for Guard and Reserve Patriot Award. Mr. Bledsoe, I believe, is going to be presenting.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. I'm the Area 1 Chair for the Employer Support of Guard and Reserve, and it's composed of volunteers and falls under the auspices of the Department of Defense. Daniel Stevenson is a full-time employee for the city as a Post Falls Park Supervisor. In addition, he is a Petty Officer First Class, E6, serving his country with the U.S. Naval Reserve. His duty station is at the Naval Operations Support Center in Spokane. Petty Officer First Class Stevenson nominated Dave Fair, who is the director of Post Falls Park and Rec Department, to receive an ESGR Patriotic Employer Award. Many people are surprised to learn that over 50% of our military is comprised of reserve and guard members. They are vital to our national defense. Without the support of their employers like the City of Post Falls and supervisors like Dave Fair, it would be very difficult for Daniel and others like him to fulfill their military mission. When a U.S. Naval Reservist is called upon to deploy, they are expected to seamlessly meld in with the full-time Navy. For them to be ready, the training is intense. They're often called on to spend more than 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer to meet the military readiness standard of today. The U.S. Naval Reserve and ESGR recognize that training demands can put a strain on employers and appreciates employers and supervisors that accommodate our reserve service members. ESGR appreciates the support that Patriot supervisors like Dave Fair provide for reservists and as Daniel Stevenson to serve the country. I'd like to have Dave Fair come up, and Daniel, would you come up too? I don't know if anybody can snap a picture here, but I'd like to read this. Maybe I should stay over here.
And here comes a photographer.
Okay. It reads, Office of the Secretary of Defense, Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, recognizes Dave Fair, City of Post Falls Parks and Rec Department, as a patriotic employer for contributing to national security and protecting liberty and freedom by supporting employee participation in America's National Guard and reserve force.
Who was the other gentleman?
I have one last thing. I'd like to invite the City of Post Falls to sign a statement of support for the Garden Reserve. I know we don't want to do it at this time, but who should I contact?
Shannon Howard, or clerk, please?
Okay.
You bet.
Thank you very much
Thanks,
for your
Brandon.
time this evening.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Dave. I should mention, we do have 3 public hearings tonight, and so if anybody wishes to speak, there's a form on the dais in the back, podium in the back. Please bring it forward to, fill it out and bring it forward to Shannon. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
There are none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict or ex parte contacts, site visits? Seeing none, would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the August 3rd, 2021 City Council meeting. Item B is payables July 27th through August 9th, 2021. Item C is North Place East subdivision plat application. And item D is Tullamore Ninth Commercial Subdivision Construction Improvement Agreement.
Questions on consent?
Move to accept the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Anthony?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. We are now down to the public hearings, and I will remind everyone, if you do wish to speak, please keep your comments pertaining to the subject at hand. I did watch a Planning and Zoning Commission where there was a campaign announcement met. That is not appropriate, Mr. Wilson. We talked to you about that. That was, can you tell us that's considered campaigning, or what was the terminology?
So there's a statute, excuse me, that requires that public facilities and public resources can't be used to lobby for or against a measure or in support or in opposition to a candidate. So statements at a public hearing or a public meeting where you're using public resources to essentially seek support for a public office violates the state code. So we'll be on our toes waiting. If that happens again, we'll probably jump in and ask that stop, just because it puts the city in a bad position.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation. So again, please keep comments related to the topic at hand. And with that, I will open the first public hearing, and I will reopen the zone code update that was continued from the August 3rd City Council meeting. And Mr. Wilson, we have had presentations, we have had testimony. Is it now soliciting additional testimony, or is it now for deliberation?
That's entirely up to you, how you want to approach that. We continued the hearing, so you could allow additional testimony if you want to. Alternatively, you can deliberate, you can make recommendations for potential changes. You could make a motion to approve, deny, however that fits into your desires. I would say that the scope of what we're talking about tonight is pretty much limited to what was presented for at the last meeting. So if there's additional changes that you would like that's beyond what we talked about at the last hearing, those changes would need to go back through the public process. So the scope of what we're dealing with is really the changes that were proposed, that were presented at the last meeting.
Thank you. Shannon, was there anybody signed up to talk?
We have 2.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Neutral, Bill Van Valkenburg, and he is,
That was via email.
okay, via email, thank you. We are neutral on the proposed zone change. We would like the following added. No 3-story buildings will be placed adjacent to or directly across the street from an existing single-family residence. We don't know if this can be achieved through a code change or if another avenue is necessary. The 3-story apartments that have been squeezed into existing neighborhoods have been devastating to the current residents. This practice needs to stop. This isn't merely a change of vista. This obliterates the sunlight, privacy, and any view. Thank you for your work on this. And neutral. Now, Bob, you spoke before. Do you want to add additional testimony? please, come forward. Bob Flowers.
Bob Flowers. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Finally, I got some of the paperwork on this so I could really go over it some, because it left questions in my mind on these. One, this shouldn't be called a zone code update. It should be a flat zone change. I mean, there are basically some very dramatic changes made in this, in our building codes. I'll take change number 4. This is all on, let's see, City of Post Falls staff report dated May 5th, 2021. Change number 4. To repeal and adopt a new 10-20-040 bulk or official bulk and placement table. Well, the last part about it looks kind of, additionally, vehicle access to single-family lots of 45 feet or less must be alley or rear loading to maximize on-street parking and stormwater management. I didn't know the city wanted people parking on the street to maximize the on-street parking, but that's exactly what it says, to maximize on-street parking. This makes no sense to me. We want the streets for people to drive in and for bikes to travel on, and that we don't need a whole lot of cars parked in the street. So that one didn't make a darn bit of sense. Then proposal number 3, to remove the minimum square footage per unit to address concerns. Are we trying to build houses these days that are size of people's garages? I mean, there's a reason why there's a minimum square footage of a residence. I mean, do we want a whole bunch of garages lined up and down the street? Or do we want homes for people to live in? I don't understand it. And then we come to proposal number 4, to remove the maximum dwelling unit density. And density column, as this can be derived within the table by dividing an acre by the minimum lot area per dwelling unit allotted. Sounds to me like we're trying to eliminate like R1 and R2 type zoning. We're just going to take, okay, this is R1, how many, or this is 5 acres, how many homes can we get in there? How many people can we get in there? It sounds like we're just trying to cram as many people into the smallest area as possible. I want to get to the last part here, even though there's a couple others, but I'm almost out of time. To amend the Post Falls Municipal Code 18-36-090, to amend and to add new Section H to read as follows. Applicants may seek administrative exceptions pursuant. Does this mean that you all can approve a housing project and then the builder can come back to the city and ask for an exemption and manage to get it through administrative exemptions? In other words, so they don't have to appear in front of a public hearing? Because if it is, it's sidestepping the public.
Your time's up, but we'll have Mr. Manley come up on rebuttal.
Thank you.
That was it?
That's it.
Mr. Manley, you want to rebut?
So the administrative exception part at the end, items that we use administrative exceptions for are like fencing. Someone wants to put up maybe an 8-foot fence. So code says 6 foot in the rear, 3 feet in the front. They come in. What we do is we notify the adjacent property owners, give the neighbors a chance to speak on that, and then we administratively review that accordingly. Another item is setbacks. Setbacks, the code allows us a 20% reduction in setbacks. And so we go through and we once again notice, and we can go from 5 to 4 and from 20 down to 16, I believe.
But that's with noticing adjacent property owners?
We notify the adjacent property. So most of our administrative exceptions are doing that. What we did this time is we did for administrative exceptions for neighborhood signage. Oftentimes, we have some in existence, some large neighborhood signs. When we updated a sign code, a lot of those pre-existing signs became non-conforming, and we had individuals doing housing developments wanted a little bit larger gateway entry signs, a little bit more bells and whistles to advertise their neighborhoods. Well, the code inhibited that as a probability. So this just allows staff to look at it. Does it make sense? We establish some rules and some parameters of that. As long as they fit in the rules, then they can go ahead and proceed with that. So that's why that it was in this code section.
Administrative.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't write down.
John, question?
Before you move on to the next, so the scenario that Mr. Flowers presented as far as somebody coming forward and wanting to do a subdivision or whatever, they can't change that through this particular administrative exception.
If there's minor changes administratively, we do modify subdivisions. A lot of times when they're not increasing the lot count or they're not increasing the density, they're rearranging items, but they could still meet the rules of the subdivision. Those oftentimes are approved administratively. Any substantive change like increased density, increased lot sizing and whatnot. We just recently did one for out west of Chase. It was the Bluegrass subdivision, or Blue Spruce. It was originally approved for duplex lots. They proposed townhome lots. So even though the density didn't increase, the lot counts increased, which warranted a major amendment, and we brought that before the Planning and Zoning Commission. We didn't administratively do that.
Okay, so it's got to be a major amendment.
And I'd just like to make a comment. My neighbor asked for a variance on his front yard fence. Staff came out and met with me. We went through it, worked it out with the neighbor. We came to an agreement. I wrote a letter saying yes, that I met with the fence company, the neighbor. He submitted that with my letter, and then they were able to do it. So it's something that didn't have to go to council on a fence variant. It was very smooth, and it's just a way for neighbors to work together and come to an agreement on it, and then just notarize it. So you do have to get the permission from the adjoining neighbor in writing. So it worked out good. So I think that's a good tool you have.
And the other one that was cited, the R2SF, the rear loaded so you can maximize some on-street parking. That actually came out through this whole public process talking about some of those narrower lots. Most of our residential streets, they are wide enough to provide on-street parking on both sides as well as a travel lane. Some of the problems you have with some narrower lots, if you have drive approaches on the front, it consumes a lot of the available parking on that street between the driveways and other driveways to your neighbors. And 45 feet tends to be that spot that it kind of cramps it a little bit. And so the whole purpose of that is to get the residents using the rear. And that way, whether you're someone's collecting trash or delivering mail or other means along that corridor, that there's less obstacles. Yes, the cars are there, but there'll be more available on-street parking, not affecting other parties by utilizing this than otherwise.
You would have, there's only so much space, only so many cars can fit there. And if they're not parking in the back, they're parking out the front, that's not going to create more cars. But getting the owners to park in the back would hopefully would facilitate less cars being parked on the street. But I do know that people park on the streets, believe me.
Yeah, and you'll see, like, one of the goals going forward is, and some future update on Title 12, it's not part of this, we didn't include this, is staff will be proposing like a ratio, 40% of the lot widths being maximized for driveway widths. So once again, we can increase the efficiency of our stormwater swells and not create near as much some of the obstacles we had in some of our other subdivisions when, especially time snow comes around. If cars are out there, confining between driveways, kind of can create an additional problem if the driveway widths could become too large along the fronts.
So
Well, then, John, You know, having said all of that, between you guys' 3 comments and Mr. Flowers, would you have a problem just getting rid of to maximize on-street parking and stormwater management? Just strike those words? Because I think that's obvious, what you're trying to do. And why would you have to tell someone that? I mean, just strike those few words.
I'm fine with it.
I checked with Mr. Wilson, he's,
Yeah, you can certainly recommend that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Flowers had one more question, and that was, what I'd like to do is get that addressed, then we can close the public hearing for deliberation.
Yeah.
Actually, I got 2, I think.
One was on the lot size, taking the total lot size, dividing by the minimum square footage or whatever. So if you want to address that one?
Yeah, so where that comes into a little bit of conflict is when it comes to PUDs. With subdivisions, even at 5 or at 6,500, I mean, if you take the dwelling, the 43,560 for an acre, and divide it by 6,500, they never yield that. I mean, by the time you get rid of driveways, swells, and the roads, the swells, and everything else that goes in a subdivision, they barely yield above, in a standard subdivision, above 4. I mean, that's typically 3.8 to 4 is what a typical subdivision is by density. So where it comes into play is the PUDs, because you get density bonuses based off of the minimum base density. And so what is that? Is it the 5, or is it the mathematical equation between dividing the minimum lot size and the acreage? And so it created this conflict of unknowns. When you're implementing code, it becomes conflictive at times. And so this gets rid of one of those conflicts by doing it by this means. So that's why that is being proposed. The other one, the minimum lots, the minimum area for a single-family home. The reason for that is we've had a numerous, even it goes back even before the comp plan adoption of that, is the diversification of housing product. As part of the public hearing, and not to go through the whole public hearing again, but I presented we've talked about missing middle, we've talked about the gap between people in rentals and the cost of buying a new home, and how that diversified housing stock could help that transition. The loss of entry-level homes. Back in the 70s, you had a lot of smaller homes and entry-level homes for people, like in tune of about 418,000 were built annually. Now I believe we're down to about 65,000 annually being built for entry-level homes. A lot of that just has to do with the type of product. I mean, we're just not building that product. We're following the money, and the money's has been in the larger homes for some time.
I'm seeing more and more areas where they have smaller homes, and I don't think we do that to encourage everyone to go out and build small homes, but I do see where there are neighborhoods where they've got narrower homes, longer homes, smaller lots, and that's what some people want. So I think it might, that does facilitate meeting a market demand. And then you look at the pricing of the homes. So, entry-level homes right now, I don't know how you would consider $450,000 home an entry level. But the smaller homes are a way to address some of those housing needs.
I mean, some people are aware of this code section, but they've informed me, like, it's great that it's there for a potential opportunity, but, by the time you get to land price, labor cost, the cost of materials, even though you may have a goal to diversify the housing product, sometimes just the cost of doing business doesn't necessarily facilitate it. But what this will do is at least will create one less hurdle to accommodate the desire to have diversified housing. And to not just have the model we currently have, 3-story apartments and $450,000 homes.
Right. Go ahead.
I have another question, just that came up from my reviewing of this. The bulk and placement regulations, why isn't RM and the SMART code, and I guess it's CCM, there's a couple of different zoning districts that aren't listed on there. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, so the mixed zones are done more qualitatively.
Okay.
It's tougher to break those down into a setback table and make them fit. Like, this is more, so you have form-based mixed zoning a little bit, and then you have Euclidean zoning. So Euclidean is what we're used to. It's the type of zoning you've seen forever, the single family, the 2-unit, the R1, R2, R3. So we're used to that, and that fits really good in that table. Some of the flex zoning or mixed zoning, needs to have more substantive data and descriptions. So that's in the description part of the zoning district. A lot of that's within that section. So that's why the two are treated differently.
Yeah, I knew it was in there, but I didn't know why we didn't translate that there. But makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Any other questions, John, on what's been presented tonight before I close the public hearing? Close the public hearing. I know, Councilor Wilhelm, you had some questions. Would you like to lead off?
I just have a few comments. First of all, I'd like to thank John Manley, our planning manager, for spending several hours with me on this project and answering several questions and driving around town actually too with me. So I appreciate that very much, John. I have several things that, well, not several things, but number one, on page 33, item number I, is talking about seasonal parking in the CCS zones. And John and I had talked about this prior to getting a letter in our packet regarding parking lots and restrooms. And in this document, it was stating that they would be 10 feet away from any property line, and I feel like that should be slashed out and made 25 feet. And then also, I would be in favor of, on page 2, under purpose number 1, on the change, to scratch again to maximize on-street parking and stormwater management. Also, I think that's probably it with this document, but I do have other comments about some letters that we did receive. So I don't know if I can maybe make those after we.
I've got to defer, Linda. I've got to defer to Warren. Is that appropriate? It's information that has come in, letters that have come in. We've closed the public hearing.
Yeah, we can speak to those and answer the questions. If there's requests for staff to seek more information, we can take that and bring that back as appropriate.
And that's okay to do now?
Yeah.
Okay, so my next question would be that if we could, special use permits were done by city council for many years, and I'm not sure what year we switched that. And in a letter, we did have a request to bring certain special use permit hearings back to the city council instead of going to planning and zoning and bypassing city council. And I would like staff to look into just bringing those back to city council and really without any kind of reservations that were in the letter that I'm speaking of. And then also, there was several discussion on a CCM zone in this letter regarding just wondering if we can maybe bring back some discussion from staff regarding the CCM zone. Should it come to planning and zoning and to council, and then some stipulations of when that would happen? Because right now, it doesn't come to either one of us. Is that correct? The CCM zoning doesn't come to either one?
So the CCM zoning, the recommendation of zoning goes before the Planning and Zoning Commission. They hear it and they make a recommendation. The development agreement portion of that, at this point in time, the goal is to get that on initial attachment through the public process. It would be before you at City Council, because City Council decides whether or not they're going to, one, accept zoning, just like any other zoning district, and then apply the development agreement with that. And so with that decision, you should receive that development agreement with the City Council notice 2 weeks ahead of time. So in reality, the CCM goes before both the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council now.
Okay, all right, okay, so there was some confusion.
Yeah, they don't
in that.
always see the development agreement, because that's
Okay.
part of the actual applying the annexation or the zone change.
Right.
And those conditions then is what is important for you as a city council to know what those are. And to
Right. And then there was there was also some mention in this same letter that I'm referring to about, what do I do with it? I don't know what I do with it now. Oh, here it is. If we could also bring back your mention of development agreements. And, you know, I was kind of wondering about this. What would be the avenue that we would take to give those development agreements out to the public? I mean, when would the public see those?
So I can speak to that a little bit. So John and I were actually just talking about this earlier today. Our process, and we've been working on making this change for a couple of months now and trying to catch up with where we're at in the queue. So the plan is for annexation agreements and for development agreements is once the Planning Commission has heard the request for the zoning, which is the same in either case, it's a request, is this zone consistent with the comprehensive plan and the city's plans? Once that's done and they've made a recommendation, staff would negotiate those agreements preliminarily with the applicant, both the annexation agreement and the development agreement. Once that's completed, we would notice up the hearing before the city council. And included in that notice would be this is a hearing on the annexation or on the zone change and on the agreement, so that agreement would be in the packet that comes to you. That agreement's that will be in the information that's posted on our website, so the public can look at it, comment on it, come and testify about it, ask for changes in the development agreement, those types of things. So that's a change that's ongoing. We actually rushed today to clean up a annexation agreement because we're getting ready to notice that annexation. So that's a change that you should see happening now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's great. And then I just have one other thing, and this doesn't have anything to do with this letter, just kind of sort of on the same, I don't know, like land use matters and things like that. I'm just wondering if possibly either you, Mr. Wilson, or if John might be able to do this, and that is to bring forward some discussion on and information on how we would go about forming an urban growth boundary if the city thought that would be a good idea. If we could have some information on that. I've done some reading on it and just wondering if we could maybe have a discussion about that. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Just a couple things. Number one, Linda's suggestion on the 25 feet. I was thinking about that same thing, but then when I looked at the setbacks on an R1, it's only 10 feet. So I was actually going to come forward with the same 25 feet, and I thought, well, heck, if somebody could build a house 10 feet from the property line, what's the difference whether they park a vehicle? So I'm open to that, but that was just my thinking on that. The development agreement. We recently approved an annexation without a development agreement, correct? Up Pleasant View?
So, yeah, like I said, this is a change that's ongoing. So the practice had been that the Planning Commission makes their recommendation, we bring that recommendation to City Council. After the council hearing, we would negotiate the agreement and bring it back. So that's how our practice had been. We're sort of literally, as we're speaking, making that change. So,
I guess my question there is that anytime there's a mixed-use zoning, council and the public will have input on that developmental agreement?
that's the intention. So always the council has input, but we're intending to have that go out with the notice of the public hearing on the zone change, so that the public should have a chance to review that agreement.
I just want to make sure that not only the council, but the public gets to weigh in on the actual
Yeah,
development.
the idea being that when they come, if somebody wants to testify at the hearing on the zoning, they could say, I've read the development agreement, I either support or I don't support, and I would like these types of changes in the agreement.
Okay.
Anybody else? Steve?
Got one question. This would be of John again. And this is on the small homes, and I was looking through those. And so do they have to be constructed on site, or could it be a prefab that they bring in and they hook up to all of our utilities? Because I notice we have some local businesses that manufacture those cedar cabins or small homes that, when you look at the floor plan, they look like a tiny home. So that would be my question. Can you bring a prefab in under this code change, or does it have to be built on site?
You could bring a prefab in, but it would have to meet the building codes as set through the building codes. So, you'd have to have a 40-pound snow load. You'd have to meet all of the requirements for any other single-family home in Post Falls.
Okay, so if they came in for a permit, they'd have to bring in their plans, their designs, and all that, then be approved by staff and.
Yeah,
staff
they would review it accordingly, and then, it may just be like a mobile home set.
Yeah.
Mobile homes are built outside, and
Yeah.
oftentimes they gotta upgrade their roof trusses to do 40-pound. They get a mobile home set, and they set it down. So something akin to that could occur
Okay.
if it was constructed off-site.
I was looking online, and there's some pretty nice ones now they are constructing, those small prefab cabins and homes. So I just wanted to know if that would fit onto the, under our code, if it met all the specifications. It
As
would.
long as it met building code, then we
Okay.
could.
Mr. Borders?
As it relates to the zone change codes and sections that we're talking about here, I'd sure like to see in the future, not for tonight's agenda, but for the future, to see the fire department involved in some of these changes. I have a huge concern about the alleys and the widths of the alleys and the utilities and et cetera that I'm not sure are addressed. And I want to make sure that we're doing the best thing for safety for the city of Post Falls. So if we could have you work with them on that, John, and
We do solicit input from the fire district, because I've got concern with the width of some of the streets, having seen fires where the trucks can't get down the street. But they would have the same opportunity, or we could make a special request for them to weigh in, is that correct?
Yeah, and when Gerald comes by our office all the time. So Gerald, oftentimes I'll go, hey, we have this code section. Did you see any issues with it? He's busy enough. He'll be like, I don't have any issues. And then, he's reviewed it and he doesn't have any concerns. Plus, we also have our subdivision design standards, which are set up and has been coordinated with the fire. So the alley widths have been coordinated. They've expressed some concerns recently. They wanted to talk about some of our drive lanes, and we're going to meet and talk about that. And that all gets usually incorporated into our design standards for roads and our subdivision design standards.
Does that work, Lynn?
yeah, that'll work.
Good.
No other comments?
Just want to go back to what Al was saying, and on page 33, number I, it's at least a 4-acre parcel for that 25 feet. So not talking about just a lot.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm good with
okay,
that.
Great. No, I'm good.
Mr. Manley, you're raising your eyebrows, is that correct? Are we?
That was just me being attentive.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, with that, I would entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the Title 18 ordinance text amendment, file number TA-0001-2021, and add under seasonal parking that the parking lot be 25 feet from any other property lines, and restroom or solid waste collection be that same 25 feet away from the property line. I would also move that we strike under purpose number 1, under change number 4, to maximize on-street parking and storm water management.
Second.
Motion second. You okay with the motion, Mr. Wilson? Further discussion?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Further discussion? They don't trust me with the roll call, Ken. Shannon, please take the roll.
Borders,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Good comment, good input. John, thanks for the explanations. Appreciate
So
it.
from here, quickly, Mayor, we'll make these changes and put the ordinance on the next agenda for adoption, the ordinance would become effective upon publication. So if we assume we're 2 weeks out from the next council meeting, it's probably that Friday, Saturday before it takes effect. So.
Thank you. Next public hearing tonight is on the fiscal year 2022 budget, and I will open that public hearing. Jason.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to start with how we got started on the budget process this year. This year was kind of strange with COVID, and we had trying to meet it as department heads to how do we roll forward with the fiscal year 22 budget. So what we did is we always wanted to try to see if we could do the budget, get it done sooner. But there's certain pieces that we don't have, we have to wait. But we met as a group, and first thing we did was we went through our existing lines, compared what they were in prior years. If it went unspent, we pulled it back out of the departmental budgets. And we did that for every fund, general fund, wastewater, water. We went through the budget and we decided which ones we were not going to use, and we pulled that back. Then we had the department submit what they had requested for fiscal year 22. So we had this big list of wants, what we wanted, and what basically, if we could fund everything, what it would be. So then the second piece was, well, what is our actual revenues that we know? Those don't come into play until down the road where AIC gives us the estimates. And there was a little hitch also where property tax was a discussion, where the annexation, new construction, we didn't know what that was going to look like. So as we started with this, we had said, okay, well, when we have a new construction or annexation, what's that going to look like? Well, we didn't know. Well, the legislation had passed that whatever the new construction and annexation was, the cities were allowed to take 90%. And okay, well, what does that do to our budget? So our new construction for fiscal year 22 would have been $145 million. However, at 90%, we're only allowed to take $130 million for value. So that leaves $15 million that the city was not allowed to take. So when we get to annexation, annexation was roughly $19 million in assessed value, but at 90%, we're only allowed to take $17 million of that. So knowing those figures, then we sat down as a group and said, what do we have to fund? In addition to that, we had, since Post Falls is growing, our state shared revenue has increased because based on the formula that they distribute back to the cities once they collect it, it's based on population. So once the population has grown, so does our state shared revenues in the tune of about $1 million. So with the state shared revenue, liquor tax still coming on strong. Let's see what else we have. Building permits. We're able to put together a budget that didn't take the 3%. And the 3% that I will be coming back to council with just roll into the foregone is just a little bit under $380,000. So this budget that I'm going to present with what the departments had requested is without the 3% property tax increase.
It's with a 0% increase.
With a 0%. There is we're not taking what's allowed by law. We're going to roll that into foregone. The taxes might have went up, but it's not because we have increased the. In fact, like the mayor mentioned today at the luncheon, the levy rate is going down. So that got us to where we're at today. So as we go forward with the budget, I wanted to do a side-by-side comparison. If you look at what we have for the general fund department expense from, and we'll go over in more detail what this is. This is just a very high level. The fiscal year 22 budget that I'm proposing is $29 million, compared to what the fiscal year 21 budget is of $25 million. The general fund dedicated accounts, which are the annexation funds, what's insurance, it is the personnel fund. Those from 22 is 7.4, and compared to the 21 of 6.7. So when we talk about general fund expenditures year over year, fiscal year 22 is 36 million, and compared to 21, which is 32 million. Special revenue funds, it's down a little compared to the prior year, 1.2 compared to 1.5. Capital projects, this is where we're going to see a lot of expenditures because this is where impact fees are collected, and we don't do anything with impact fees till we have enough to spend it on projects. So over the years, we've accumulated funds in the street impact fees, and this year you'll see a lot of expenses coming through with these in the impact fees for streets. So this is where we're actually spending it down. Debt service is still the same at $528,000, and the enterprise funds will slightly decrease from fiscal year 21 to 54 million to 46 million. And so the total is, that was my first, I wanted to point out what I had first put on my, the total fund expenditures, what I put on my advertisement was the 118 million, but the total I'm proposing for the budget for total is 117 million. It looks a little odd on this, but I wanted to point it out that what I advertised was more than what I'm proposing to actually bring forward for fiscal year 22.
And just to highlight again, the general fund, primarily the difference is the American Rescue Act funds that you guys will allocate later in the fiscal year, once we have all the regulations on how those funds can be spent.
Those are funds from the federal government?
Those are the funds from the federal government, so there's 7.4 million. We've budgeted about 4 million of that in there, I believe.
Yes, that's correct. I have my little clicker, okay. So when we went through the police budget, what I'm proposing to bring forward is 2 new police officers, and that is going to be salary and benefits. For the 2 is going to be $167,000. I'm also proposing a ECO of $71,000, upgrading a current position in the IT to a senior support tech, and that's going to run roughly $14,000. And we're going to do 3 new vehicles for the police department. That's what I'm proposing. I want to also point out that there's certain purchases that I'll point out along the way that even though I have budgeted the expense, the revenue source is going to be a reserve fund that I've set aside for vehicles. So I still have to budget it by, legally have to budget it because we're going to expend it. But the revenue source comes from fund balance from a reserve that I have set aside based on for the vehicles. And the police vehicles, that's one of them.
Jason, just to make sure everyone's aware, we're not spending $62,000 for every car we purchase. That includes fully equipping it.
And that's
getting it
correct.
ready for the road.
The police department has special equipment that is not necessarily on every other vehicle that we purchase. They have the radios, the computers, the lights, the sirens. It's a completely fully outfitted police car. So for those 3, it's $186,000. But we will be using a vehicle replacement fund for those 3 cars. I'm also proposing that we have a new assistant city attorney, or sorry, a city prosecuting attorney for $100,000 and a vehicle with that position of $25,000. There has been a new law of having the county has hired additional judges, and so the cities are basically, it's a mandate that we hire new prosecuting attorneys to get them through. So the city is proposing this position with a new vehicle.
Have we, I know there was discussion on we work with City of Rathdrum,
Hayden.
and we had talked with City of Hayden as well. Is that moving forward?
It is. We've entered into agreement with them. We're starting to have discussions about how to bring them on. We'll take over their prosecution effective October 1st.
Okay. And for streets, there's a position that's going to be called a Projects Division Manager, and you can see off to the side, it's going to be funded by 3 different funding sources. 60% is going to be the wastewater, 20% water, and 20% general fund. The general fund's portion of it's roughly $17,000. Also in the streets department, the Kootenai Electric portion of it has increased over the years, and so the portion I'm proposing of the increased budget is $54,000 on top of what we currently budget for Kootenai Electric. Streets again, if you'll see at the top, I have 2 vehicles for the 2,500 heavy-duty trucks. Those will be funded by vehicle replacement. I do believe, let me look real quick. I wrote this down in the back. Those will be new purchases, so those aren't part of the replacement fund. So those will be. The streets has proposing that we have safety training for $10,000, which will be in the budget. The Streets Department also wants to roll out a pavement condition assessment, and that contract's going to be $100,000. And also at the Streets Department, they want to build a covered storage for the sand, salt, and trucks of roughly $150,000. Here we go down on the fleet where we are talking about the vehicle replacements. That will be coming out of the vehicle replacement fund of the $642,000. So again, I have to budget it, but the funding source is the vehicle replacement fund. Diagnostic tools for $13,000, a flatbed trailer for $5,000, and a heavy-duty extra cab truck for $35,000. And this position that I'm proposing, we fund for fiscal year 22 as a staff engineer for $98,000. What the plan is to have the work done in-house versus contracted out. So we're bringing that work inside. Parks is wanting a senior landscape construction tech for $70,000. The equipment replacement for Parks, that will be coming out of the replacement fund I have, $62,600. Also for Parks is $14,500 of sand, dirt, concrete. Facility security request for Parks, $35,000. A flatbed truck, $57,500. Singing Hills upgrade, this has been something that's been discussion for Parks that they want to make those changes, and to do that, it's going to be $176,500. Creation of equipment bays for $94,000. A 1-ton flatbed truck for $63,000, and regrading a crown point, which has also been a big discussion for the Parks Department, and that's going to run $300,000.
That Singing Hills, that excludes the dog park, right?
Correct.
It is irrigation.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. Thank you. Urban forestry. Crew cab truck, $57,500. Dump truck trailer for $16,000. Mini skid loader, $54,000. Also a stump grinder attachment, $14,000. Another attachment for $2,500. A grapple attachment for $7,000. And there's going to be some Black Bay Park forestry work for $14,000. On capital projects, the city center parking, the project is estimated cost $580,000, but again, that will be from a carryover from money that we have. So it's going to be we already have the money. It's not an additional funding source we have. That will be done in fiscal year 22. We have increased the facility replacement amount to $350,000 for fiscal year 22, and also increased the vehicle replacement account to $300,000. Our insurance, as estimated, that the Human Resources Department received information that our insurance costs will go up $300,000 for fiscal year 22, and I'm also proposing a COLA merit for staff, and that's going to be $777,000. That is the general fund. Like I said, there was some. Talked about state shared revenues. Yeah. One thing I also wanted to talk about of the foregone, since the city is not taking a property tax increase again by the 3%, there's going to be roughly $380,000 that's rolled over to foregone. In addition, this has been a topic of discussion, what the city of Post Falls has currently in foregone, and it is $2,860,000. So we'll be adding to that again this year.
And just for clarification, that's not money just sitting there. That's the authority of the city to levy a tax up
Right.
to that amount.
Right, that's true. If the city so choose, they could take $2.8 million, but that has been money that's been not taken over the years and just it's banked off to the side.
But there are a number of restrictions with the legislative changes that have been made on how that money can be spent, and the amount of that money can be spent at one time, so. And you have to go through a process and notification that you're going to spend those funds.
Linda?
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
I know that the total went down to $117,936,43, but I missed what the general fund went down to. I couldn't see it on your screen, and I don't see it on my page. Gotta be 36 million something, but I don't.
Is that my front? Oh,
Yeah, that page.
yeah, it was 36 million. It is,
968?
yeah, 968.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Al.
Okay.
Jason, so you just ran off a lot of stuff with a lot of big numbers in there.
Yes,
Just want to, we're still not raising taxes.
we're not raising taxes,
Still,
no.
we're going to pay for all that, all those people and all that stuff without raising taxes.
Correct. By using with the state shared revenues that come in, whether it's liquor tax, whether it's sales tax that's rolled back to the city, whether it's currently we are using building fees for the general fund, and those are holding steady at what we've had to be able to fund these positions and these expenses for fiscal year '22. And we had, even though it's been a reduction in the property tax and new construction annexation, that is also rolled into this budget, but we're not taking any of the 3%.
Great, thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
You're welcome.
Steve?
Yeah, Jason, I just got a question on the police department.
Okay.
When you look through their figures, it looks like their budget actually went down.
Okay.
But we actually increased their budget. So is there figures so the true police department budget isn't 7,100,000. It's larger than that, I assume, because most people don't want to see reductions in public safety.
What's
so-
happened was last year we purchased 6 vehicles instead of the 3, or this year. So in comparison, we usually do 3 every year. Last year, this year, fiscal year '21, we purchased 6 vehicles instead of the 3. So we're back on the 3 because the fiscal year '20, they had a backlog of the vehicles that they were looking for. So we didn't purchase any of the 3 prior to, but in fiscal year '21, this year, we purchased 6.
And then the officers we hired would be in the personnel pool then?
They're all within the department. We have the positions that are funded in the department. So if you see an FTE for the PD, they're in the department line.
Yeah. I just want to be able to explain if somebody says, if you look at the bottom line, it looks like the police department budget went
Right.
down when we're raising population,
Which
where
it did
actually
because
it didn't. It's,
Because we do budget the capital in their department line. So each year I pull the capital back out, and if they need new capital, I need a request for it. So in fiscal year '21, they requested 6 vehicles, and this year we're only purchasing 3.
Really, if
So
you're
that'd be
comparing year to year, you have to compare personnel and operating year to year,
Yeah.
not capital. Capital is an excluded line that's separate, and so if someone wants to compare whether or not a budget's increasing or decreasing, it's really the operating and personnel that you're looking at.
Correct. That's exactly it.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. We're not done yet. We're moving on to water and wastewater. Okay. I've broken this out by how the departments are actually put together in the general ledger. So it's, you'll see first of all, the reclaimed operating project division manager proposed was in the wastewater budget, a treatment operations lead of 1 FTE, a crane for $75,000, and the project division manager vehicle for $25,000. In the categories we have, not only, like you'll see, the first category is operating. The next category we have is a capital for wastewater treatment plant, and the other category below it is the capital for the collector. So under the wastewater treatment plant, the tertiary treatment project is $22 million. Updating the facility plan is estimated to be $40,000, and the outfall replacement project is roughly $500,000. Under the collector portion of it, the Ponderosa lift station is estimated $600,000, a collection project design of roughly $350,000, and the decommission of the Prairie Falls is going to be $400,000. A lot of dollars in that.
I'm going to mention here also, just for those who are not familiar with our budget, the reason why we break down our wastewater treatment from our collector is because of our contract with Rathdrum. And so we charge them for treatment, but they don't have any involvement with our collection portion. They have their own collection portion. So we track all of that separately.
Do they have a pipe directly into the plant from Rathdrum? John's saying yes. Thank you.
Okay. So that's the proposal for the wastewater. And last but certainly not least is the water division. The water is handheld meters, estimated $12,000, sorry. A service truck for $150,000, a dump truck for $95,000, tapping machine for $16,000, distribution system design of $100,000, a hydrant flush unit for $12,500, And a well house for well number 11 is roughly $1 million. So those are the requests in addition to what they had in the budget for fiscal year 21. Not the capital, we pulled the capital back out. If they need capital, they have to resubmit a budget request for fiscal year 22. So with the addition of general fund and the water and the wastewater, that's what I proposed to bring forward for council for approval for fiscal year 22.
I think it's important to note, we always want to see taxes go down. And, I think staff does a good job looking at the numbers, and you see a lot of vehicles purchased. That's because we run our vehicles pretty much till they don't work anymore.
It's true.
And there are times when you have to replace them, you have to add police officers, you have to have the vehicles. In the last 13 years, we've taken one increase, and that was the replacement for the streetlight fees. And if we look at a lot of the taxing entities around us, there are several that are taking the full 3%. Growth doesn't always pay for itself, but growth has been the one reason that we have not had to take an increase. And it's really difficult because we tell people, we're not increasing your taxes. We're actually lowering the levy rate, but because of the tax shift between residential and commercial and the increased values on the residential, even with the lower levy rate from the city of Post Falls, taxes are going to go up.
True.
And the challenge is we're one of several taxing entities that show up on your tax bill. And so, again, I think if you look at ours, our levy rate goes down. I'm not sure what the others are going to do. But, again, I think it's commendable. I wish we could go lower, but it's commendable that we have not had to levy an increase in our actual levy rate for that long. So, and staff does a great job. I remember several years ago, neighboring city was all excited because staff brought them a balanced budget. Well, our staff have been doing it for about 8 years prior to that. So again, it's a collaborative effort between department heads, administration, council, and again, I'd love to see the taxes go down. The assessor was at my house taking pictures last week. But it is what it is, and we are not increasing the levy rates. So things could change. Growth slows, values decrease. It's going to be interesting to see. It's also going to be interesting to see what the actual effect of the legislation that was passed, limiting new growth to 90% and urban renewal closures to 80%. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that affects us. So,
And you mentioned a good point. We talked about vehicles. We use a replacement fund, and how I fund that over the years is I've been taking whatever depreciation we have, annual depreciation of the existing vehicles. I've been putting that aside, and we buy a new vehicle. The department will purchase it, and now we have some that have replacement dollars tied to it. But when those vehicles go to auction and we get money for those, that goes back into the replacement fund. So whatever vehicles leave and they come back, that goes to the replacement dollars into that fund to purchase new. So it doesn't roll back into the fund balance general fund, it goes into the replacement reserve, so.
well, and Shelley made a comment on the deputy prosecutor.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're required to do that because, as you stated, they've increased the number of judges. We have to have people in their courtrooms. We currently, we're still prosecuting for Rathdrum, are we not?
Yes.
And with the addition of the prosecution for the city of Hayden, they are paying.
They do pay.
As well. So we're doing it because we're required to do it, but we're also collecting revenue from both the cities of Rathdrum and soon to be the city of Hayden. So.
And that's a good point. We do pay the employee on staff, but we do also bill for those positions and so we do collect that as well, so.
Any questions of Jason? Carrie, go ahead.
I don't have a question, but because this is up here right now and we're all thinking about it, I find it, I don't know if it's just because these lights are bright. These are really difficult
dim?
to read.
Okay.
And either one of these, no matter which way I look.
Sure.
My suggestion would be for these PowerPoints to be black ink on white paper.
Okay.
I don't know how this translates to the audience at home when you put that up. If they can see it any clearer than I can, but
Sometimes it's different from the computer screen to the.
yeah.
We've discussed going to a standard PowerPoint that everyone has to use. I'd sent out an email to council. I spent a year ago talking about that. I am in support of a standard PowerPoint, everybody using the same color, so we'll move forward with that.
Oh, thank you. Or turn the lights down or something. I don't know.
Yeah, they're extremely bright for some reason today.
Any questions, comments?
I got a comment.
Al.
I applaud you all for being able to, all these years, bring us a balanced budget. I guess my comment is not for staff, it's for constituents, citizens, because we want to bring a balanced budget, but at the same time, we do not want to see services diminish. I don't think we will see services diminish, but I would put that out there to the collective citizenry, that if they somehow feel that they want to be taxed more and get more services, they got to let us know. So,
Fair enough.
Well, and I made a comment earlier today in talking with Mr. Beecham. If you look at the wastewater plant, that's a huge number. It's a huge number. And we have been told if we didn't have growth, we wouldn't need that. But when I asked Mr. Beecham that question 2 months ago, he estimated that 90% of that cost was to make sure we comply with federal mandates, and only 10% of it was attributable to growth. So yeah, we do have to pay to grow our collection system and our treatment system. But by the same token, 90% of it is just going to meet the requirements that we're faced with as far as treatment of the wastewater. So it's a huge number, we understand that. But I want everyone to know that it's not taken lightly. And had we not had to comply, we would have always done the right thing, but I'm sure it wouldn't have been as expensive.
That's true.
We need a motion tonight.
So this is a public hearing, so
Oh, sorry, thank you. Yep. Anybody wishing to testify?
We have none.
No rebuttal?
No rebuttal.
Close the public hearing. Discussion. Thank you. Thanks, Warren. Anybody, anything else to
Unless
add?
anybody has anything, I'm ready to make a motion. I would move to approve the fiscal year 2022 budget. Overall budget, $170,930,643, and the general fund amount being $36,968,349.
Second.
Motion seconds, further discussion. Shannon, please take the roll.
Borders,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Wolf,
aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes, thank you. Thanks, Jason. Next public hearing is the fiscal year 2022 fee public hearing. Open that public hearing.
All right, Mayor and Council, this is the second portion of the budget cycle, which basically establishes the fees. This year, the fees are very straightforward. Hopefully this screen's a little easier to see. I changed the PowerPoint. For fiscal year 22, the rates still do increase. The water rates are going to increase 3% based on the rate study. Wastewater rates will also increase by 7% based on the rate study. Reclaimed water cap fees are going to increase by 2.85%. Let's go back to talk about how the cap fees were originally calculated. Was deemed incorrect. It was corrected by the judge, and then to go back to have a different calculation. The FCS group created the model. We update the model every year based on what our expenses are and whatever we has a fill in the blank of based on the assets we have. So this year, the proposed rate based on the rate study is 2.85% for reclaimed water cap fees. The same calculation is done for water cap fees, and that increases 8.7%. We had just finished the impact fee study, and it's going to be time to increase them again based on the ENR from April to April, and the impact fees will go up 3.8%. And sanitation fees with post-fall sanitation, we have a contract with them, and based on different indexes, their sanitation fees will increase 4%. Well, the easiest way to look at this is say, what does this look like for the regular homeowner? So currently, if you have your sanitation account, it will go up 45 cents. Your water connection will go up 36 cents. And if you use 5 units of water, roughly, your bill will go up 20 cents. The wastewater portion, the increases are going to be smaller in the upcoming years, but they're still going to be increased. So in fiscal year 21, your wastewater will go up $4.27. And if you use 5 units of water based on our water meters, your monthly bill will go up $5.28. It's always easier to, what does that mean for the homeowner? And this is a very simple calculation that we go through what your bill will look like. All right. In the packet, I had also put in a fee schedule of, and made any changes on anything that's highlighted in yellow. If you look at the first one, the cap fees will go up to 8.7, as I had suggested. The cap fees will go up on the next page for the reclaimed water. Solid waste, I tried to highlight the 4% increase of what that's going to look like. Let's see, that is up to page 6. Page 8 and 9 is the park recreation fees, and I do have a change. Dave had made a suggestion that he wanted to take on page 9, the youth sponsorship fee. I have on here currently $150. I had information to change it to $175, but he wants to update that. That's not in the packet, to $200. So that's the change that we have on for impact fee, or sorry, for recreation fees. That's not on the handout.
What was that number? Which one? Line item?
On the,
Page 9?
yeah, on page 9.
Jason, hang
So-
on a minute.
Quickly, if that exceeds the 5% and it wasn't in the packet and wasn't noticed, then we'd have to renotice that change before we could adopt it
Okay.
and go through a hearing on that change.
Okay, then it is, so we'll have to bring that back later. Okay.
175,
Okay.
and when we bring back the parking fees, we'll adjust all that.
Okay, that was the other portion too. The parking fees that we had been prior in discussions are not in this fee resolution, so.
When do you anticipate that will come back?
Next month, it's gonna go to Park and Recreation Board, and then after that, we'll come back to council.
Okay. Lynn, does that work for you? I know you and Carrie had concerns on that. Is that right?
Okay. Post Falls Festival fees on page 10, slight increase in the booth fees. Again, anything that had changed, I tried to highlight in yellow to make it stand out, make it clear what it was going to be. The next change comes up into the cemetery fees. The cemetery did just a quick change on what the fees are going to be, and it looks like, and to change, so that it's only on weekends, Saturdays, and no Sundays. They wanted to make that clear in the fee resolution. And I had,
So while he's doing that, I'll explain again, just for our process for people listening in. We re-adopt every fee at every fiscal year, and we have a master resolution so that you're not looking at several resolutions. And when I started working here, there were several resolutions depending upon when a fee was set. So the fee resolution is long because it's every fee that the city charges.
Right.
And is approved. So every year, even if we don't change the fee, we re-adopt it in the master resolution.
Well, I want to ask a question too. So you'll bring back the parking fees.
right,
And if that's a decrease, that does not have to go to a public hearing. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's just an increase of more than, a new fee or an increase of more than 5%.
So now if we're going to, and Dave said he would bring back the sponsorship fee, but if that is more than 5% increase, we would have to have a public hearing. We could take care of both of those, but we would have to have the public hearing on this.
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure I understand.
okay. And then on page 21, I broke out the impact fees changes based on, even though they were adopted recently, on page 21, the adoption portion's up on top, and down below, the proposed 3.8% shows what they're going to be after the, based on the ENR, engineering record.
Jason, on those impact fees, is that a regular increase each year?
Yeah, every year we look at the April to April, and then we base the increase based on whatever the index is.
So when we go back and adopt the whole impact fee with all the study, that is just making a bigger adjustment to that?
Yeah, that's what happened, was the impact fees was based on, it was based on information we had prior
Yeah, okay.
to, and then when we adopted them, and my change comes later, we had talked about, since information was, I think, 2019. Do we take the ENRs along the way, or do we just say once we adopt it, then we take current ENRs, and that's the path we're moving forward with?
Okay. So we won't have to do that
We'll do it every
5
year.
years?
Once the impact fees are adopted, there's no ENR adjustment, but based on when we do the impact fee study to adjust them annually, we use the engineering news record of April to April, and whatever that is, we adjust it.
Very good.
All right.
You will be adopting every 5 years a new study. Many times there's a large change because there have been additional projects and things added to the master plan, so.
Okay. But in that
And-
5-year period, it's not like we're locked in year 0 for the next 5 years.
No, we do the ENR index every year on top of that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's it.
Just wanted to be clear on that. Thanks.
Okay. And that's all I
That it?
had. That's
Any
it.
questions of Jason? Anyone wishing to testify? Via email. Fee hearing in opposition. This is, again, Bill and Kim Van Valkenburg. We are opposed to the proposed fee increase. The amount of the increase should have been posted. It is an extra hardship to many of the current residents. Thank you. Didn't say. Just fees,
Fees
period.
in general.
And they were noticed and
So they were
published,
posted,
so.
yeah. Okay.
We do get that from our office a lot, saying that sometimes the increase is more than what they have if they're on a limited income, if they're a retiree, or are based on Social Security. We do in my office have a program for based on income requirements. If you meet the level of threshold, you can apply every year, because we do have to verify, the auditors do want to see what the income of the person getting the discount is. So we do have that program available. Currently, there's about 40 people, based on the 11,000 utility customers that we have, there's only about 40 people on the program. And so we do have that for the ones that do qualify, so
Good, thank you. No rebuttal?
no rebuttal.
I'll close the public hearing. Council. Steve?
I do have one question of Dave, because it looks like you've went through and adjusted all your fees. Is that based on what you're anticipating higher wages or salaries to part-time employees, or?
That's correct. Those numbers were based on the adjustments in salary we're looking for seasonal, but also in some of the supply costs and everything, which is why, just so you guys know, on the sponsorship, the change there, in talking to our suppliers, that covers T-shirts that we provide. We have, the different teams and stuff, and we're seeing a real jump in that spot, but that's what it goes towards.
So it's mainly just the cost of doing business now?
It's the hard cost of.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave. Any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the fiscal year 2022 fee schedule.
Second. Motion seconds. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Next up tonight is unfinished business returning ordinances. We have none. New business, we have none. And followed by citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding city-related issues that are not on the agenda. Anyone wishes to speak, please come forward, give your name for the record, and we have a timer up here. Seeing none. Administrative staff reports and core tariff follow-up from the August 3rd council meeting. And as I recall, citizen asked us questions about this particular project, and so you were going to provide
That is
information.
correct. So Howard Burns had come forward during the last council meeting under citizen comments and brought a map of a conceptual drawing that he found on the website from the Hemmingson Group, and then also a map of the KMPO's Hutter corridor right-of-way needs. And so I've reached out and spoken with KMPO, Glenn Miles, Executive Director, and he assured me that the Hemmingson Group has been in contact with KMPO. The project itself is being turned over to ITD at this point, and the Hemmingson Group is in the process of setting up a meeting with ITD to discuss this project. The Hemmingson Group is fully aware of the right-of-way needs that are currently being considered for this project. And Connie Kruger, who is one of the contractors they're using, assured me that the concept drawing is a basic beginning concept drawing that they had put on the website, but they're currently in the process of updating those concept drawings of what they might look like, and they're overlaying the rights-of-way needs. There was also a question on the pole line Hanley intersection, which is really completely out of our jurisdiction, and so Bob Seal helped me connect with Chris Bosley, the Coeur d'Alene engineer, and he's quoted as saying the extension of Hanley Avenue to Hutter Pole Line is to be completed by Architera, which is part of the Hemmingson Group, when they begin the phases of the subdivision south of the Prairie Trail. There is no solid timeline for that, and they still have some development to complete north of the Prairie Trail. The design of the interchange with the Hutter bypass hasn't been developed, but that intersection will be taken into account with the project. So that will take into consideration the Hutter bypass as it's moving forward and being designed and developed. For the project itself, the Armstrong property was purchased by the Hemmingson Group. They are looking at all avenues. They've hired contractors to look at design, look at what is going to be in their best interest as far as what they're going to do with this project. There really hasn't been much contact with the city of Post Falls at this point because they're doing their due diligence at this point. They have a few options available to them. Currently, all of that is in the county. Half of it, or a little over half of it, when you look at Hutter Road, that's the ACI division between City of Coeur d'Alene and City of Post Falls. So the west side is in the Post Falls ACI. The east side is in the Coeur d'Alene ACI. They could develop it all in the county. They could annex a portion of it into Coeur d'Alene or Post Falls and develop the rest in the county. They could follow the ACI, request annexation into Coeur d'Alene, and request annexation into Post Falls, and ask to be developed in both of those cities as it's currently considered under the ACI. They could request all of it be annexed into the city of Coeur d'Alene. They could request that all of it be annexed into the city of Post Falls. At this point, they have not decided what direction they're headed, but they have set up a meeting to speak with the city of Post Falls about our objection to the comp plan that Coeur d'Alene has proposed, that all of it be included in their comp plan. And so that meeting is scheduled about 2 or 3 weeks out, I think. Just to have, and that's just the conversation about the comp plan. It's not a conversation about their project or anything else. But at this point, they're doing their due diligence. They're looking at, and the biggest trigger for them, according to what we're hearing, is to deal with wastewater. They have to drill under the freeway to get wastewater on the Post Falls side. And so they had a JUB engage in a wastewater study for Coeur d'Alene if they were to service this entire area using Coeur d'Alene wastewater. And so that was one of the studies that they requested because wastewater could be expensive being serviced out of Post Falls.
Okay. Questions on that? That was a good synopsis you provided us. Thank you.
Yep.
And there were details in the packet also.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, council comments. I would just like to state that, with the continued fires that we are experiencing, I think Chief Ryan has left, but for all those who are fighting these fires, thank you very much. I ask everybody to be extremely careful. I was out on the golf course and I saw someone take a swing and a spark come out of the club, and I thought, as dry as some of that grass is, that could have started a fire. So you have to be cognizant of everything we do right now, just because everything is so tinder dry. So again, thank you to the men and women that are fighting these fires. I had a young lady come into my office a week or so ago, and we were talking. I said, "What do you do?" And she says, "Well, I work for the Forest Service." And I says, "Well, what do you do for the Forest Service?" She goes, "Well, I fight fires." Mm-hmm. And she was smaller than my youngest daughter, and I was just amazed. So, I just have a ton of respect for everybody that fights those fires. And it doesn't matter how big they are, they're putting their life in danger. So, again, thanks to all those people that are fighting those fires. Council comments? Al?
I just wanted to thank whoever's responsible for providing us with the minutes from the other entities, Park and Rec and URD. I don't care how we get them, but it's a lot easier than when I've been going back myself and digging through those, so.
We're actually going to set it up where they're going to be listed on the website, and then every week I'll give you a link for it.
Perfect.
Whatever. That's great. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Bless you.
We do not need an executive session tonight.
We do not, sir.
Next motion is?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.